I overheard my wife call me an ATM to her friends. She didn't know I was standing on the other side of the kitchen wall. I've been married to Brielle for 9 years, together for 11. We have a son, Olin, who's 7. I work as an electrical engineer for a power company. I make good money, not rich, but comfortable. Brielle stopped working when Olin was born and never went back. That was a decision we made together. I told her I could cover everything and I wanted her home with him during those early years. I meant it. I never resented it. What I didn't realize was that somewhere along the way, Brielle stopped seeing my income as something I earned and started seeing it as something she managed. She handled the household budget. She paid the bills from our joint account. She made the purchases. And slowly, without either of us naming it, my role in the marriage shifted from partner to provider and then from provider to source. I didn't notice because the money never felt like a problem, but there were signs. She'd buy something expensive and tell me after. Never before. A $900 chair, a $400 pair of boots, a spa weekend with her friend Nadia that cost over $1,200. Every time I asked, she'd say we can afford it, which was technically true but wasn't the point. She never asked. She spent like someone who had earned it, and I worked like someone who wasn't allowed to question where it went. I brought it up once about 3 years ago, said I felt left out of financial decisions and wanted us to talk before big purchases. She said she didn't need permission to buy things for the house and it felt controlling to check in first. She used that word, controlling. I backed off, but she was the one who turned the money into a power structure. The night I heard it was a Friday. Brielle had 3 friends over, Nadia, Kristen, and Lux. I was supposed to be at the gym but came home early because Olin texted from his tablet saying he felt sick. I came in through the garage toward the kitchen and heard them talking in the living room on the other side of the wall. Kristen was telling a story about her husband forgetting their anniversary. Brielle said at least yours remembers your birthday. Nadia said something about how Kristen's husband brought flowers last week, and Brielle said I don't need flowers. I just need the ATM to keep working. They laughed, all of them. Nadia said girl stop and kept laughing. Brielle said I'm serious. As long as that direct deposit hits every 2 weeks, I'm good. More laughing. Lux said you're terrible and Brielle said I'm honest. I stood in the kitchen holding a glass of water and couldn't move. 9 years, a son, a house I paid for. And to the woman I built it with, I was a machine that dispensed money. I didn't confront her that night. Went upstairs, checked on Olin, gave him medicine, sat with him until he fell asleep and went to bed. Brielle came up around midnight. She said you're home early. I said Olin was sick. She said is he okay? I said yes. She rolled over and went to sleep. Never asked how I was. The next few weeks I watched. The way she talked about money like it was hers. The way she'd say, I need to get the car detailed. Not we should. The way she'd tell Olin mommy will buy you that without mentioning where the money came from. The way she called the house her house in conversations with her mother, even though I paid the mortgage alone for 9 years. She'd built an identity around a lifestyle she contributed nothing to financially and never acknowledged where it came from. I made an appointment with a financial advisor, not a divorce lawyer. An advisor. I wanted to understand what my money was doing. What I found was that Brielle had been transferring small amounts from our joint account into a personal savings account she'd opened without telling me. $200 here, $300 there. Over 4 years, it added up to just under $14,000. She never mentioned it once. I brought it up on a Tuesday after Olin was in bed. Didn't raise my voice. Told her I knew about the personal account. She got defensive immediately. Said every woman needs her own money in case something happens. I asked in case what happens. She said in case things change. I told her if she felt she needed an escape fund, we had bigger problems than a savings account. She said I was twisting her words. I said she'd been twisting our money for 4 years. And then I told her what I heard that Friday night. I said I was in the kitchen when she called me an ATM, and her friends laughed and she doubled down and said as long as the direct deposit hits, I'm good. She went pale. She stared at me for a long time without blinking. Then she said I was eavesdropping on a private conversation. That was her response. Not sorry. Not I didn't mean it. Not even silence, which would have at least suggested she felt something. She turned it around and made me the one who violated something. I said you called me an ATM in the house I pay for while I was walking in to check on our sick son, and your first instinct is to blame me for hearing it. She said I was being dramatic. She said women talk like that. She said Kristen calls her husband worse things. She said it was just how friends vent, and I was taking it out of context, and that every wife complains about her husband sometimes. I asked her what context makes it okay to reduce your husband to a direct deposit. She didn't answer that question. She said I was impossible to talk to when I got like this. Then she went to bed. Not crying, not apologetic, annoyed. Like I had inconvenienced her by having feelings about what she said about me in my own living room to 3 women I had hosted in my home more times than I could count. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my side of the bed listening to her breathe, and I thought about every year of this marriage. Every raise I earned that she spent. Every bonus that disappeared into the joint account and came out the other side as something she picked without consulting me. Every time I brought lunch from home so the numbers stayed comfortable, and every time she ordered $60 worth of sushi for her and Nadia on a Tuesday afternoon, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be the kind of husband who monitored his wife's spending. I thought about the time I wanted to buy a new fishing rod. It was $340. I talked myself out of it because I felt like I should check with Brielle first since it was a big purchase. She had spent $400 on boots the same month without a word to me. I let that standard exist in my own home. I held myself to a rule that she had made clear didn't apply to her. I had spent 9 years being careful not to be controlling, and she had spent 9 years taking advantage of that care like it was weakness. The next morning I called a divorce attorney, not to file, to understand my options. His name was Callum Rhodes. He told me something that changed the way I saw everything. He said in this state, the money Brielle put in her personal savings account was still considered marital assets, but the fact that she hid it demonstrated a pattern of financial deception that a judge would take seriously. He said the ATM comment by itself meant nothing legally, but the secret account, the credit card spending I hadn't authorized, and the overall pattern of unilateral financial control could be relevant in determining equitable distribution. He asked me to document everything, so I did. I went through 4 years of bank statements. I found every transfer to her hidden account. I found $4,200 in credit card charges she had paid off from the joint account without telling me, a $1,400 purse. $800 at a salon in one visit. $600 on a gift for Nadia's birthday. I found a monthly subscription to a personal styling service at $250 a month that had been running for 2 years. That was $6,000 I never knew about. In total, Brielle had spent or moved approximately $24,200 over 4 years without my knowledge or consent. I didn't confront her with the numbers right away. I sat with them for a week. I organized everything into a folder on my laptop. Dates, amounts, descriptions, transfer records. I was building a case not because I wanted a war, but because I had learned that Brielle would deny anything she wasn't pinned to. The second conversation happened on a Saturday afternoon. Olin was at a friend's house for a birthday party. I had 3 hours. I sat Brielle down at the kitchen table and opened the laptop. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just turned the screen toward her and showed her the spreadsheet. Every transaction, every hidden purchase, every transfer, $24,200 in 4 years. I watched her eyes move across the rows. She scrolled slowly at first and then faster, like she was looking for the end of the list, and the list kept going. She looked at the screen and then she looked at me, and I watched her cycle through 4 emotions in about 10 seconds. Surprise that I had found all of it. Fear of what it meant. Anger that I had gone through the records. Then the one she always landed on. Deflection. She said half of that was household stuff. I said a $1,400 purse is not a household expense. She said the styling service was for both of us because she needed to look presentable for events. I said we went to 2 events in 2 years and neither required a $250 monthly subscription. She said I was nitpicking. I said $24,200 is not a nitpick. She went quiet. Then she said something I will never forget. She said if I made more money, she wouldn't have to be so creative with the budget. I let that sit in the air between us. 9 years of overtime. 9 years of early mornings. 9 years of taking on extra projects and missing weekends and eating leftovers at my desk. And the woman who contributed $0 to the household income just told me that the problem was I didn't make enough. I closed the laptop. I said, I think we're done here. She said, what does that mean? I said, it means I'm going to talk to my lawyer. She said, you have a lawyer. I said, not yet, but I will by tomorrow. Her whole demeanor changed. The defiance disappeared and she started bargaining. She said she didn't mean it. She said she was defensive and it came out wrong. She said she loved me and she was grateful for everything I did. She said we should go to counseling. She said she'd close the personal account. She said she'd stop spending without asking. She made 8 promises in 3 minutes. I counted because I had been counting things for weeks now. Transfers, charges, lies, promises from a woman who called me an ATM and told me I didn't make enough in the same month. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't tell her I had already consulted a lawyer. I wanted to see what she would actually do without knowing the ground was shifting under her. What she did was call her mother. I knew she would. When Brielle felt cornered, she always called her mother because her mother had spent 30 years believing that husbands existed to fund the household and wives existed to manage them, and anyone who questioned that arrangement was the problem. Her mother called me the next day and told me I was being unreasonable. She said Brielle was a wonderful mother and I should be grateful she stayed home with Olin instead of working. She said plenty of men would love a wife who kept the house running and raised the children. She said men who make money and then hold it over their wives are abusers. I said I have never held anything over Brielle, not once in 9 years. She held $24,000 behind my back and called me an ATM to her friends, and I'm the one being called an abuser. Her mother hung up on me. She called back an hour later with a different approach. She said Brielle was crying and I needed to fix this. She said whatever Brielle said to her friends didn't matter because that's just how women talk. I said, if that's just how women talk, then maybe that's the problem. She hung up again. I was done communicating through intermediaries. Brielle called me that evening. She was calm, calmer than I expected. She said she had called a therapist and booked an appointment for the following week. She said she wanted to save the marriage. She said she would give me full access to the personal account and close the credit cards immediately. She said she was wrong and she knew it and she was done making excuses. I said I appreciated that. I said I'd come to therapy with her. I said I wasn't making promises about where this ends, but I was willing to try. We started the following week. The therapist's name was Dr. Wynn. She was direct and didn't let either of us hide. In the first session, she asked Brielle to explain the ATM comment. Brielle gave the same answer she gave me. Women talk like that. It's just venting. It didn't mean anything. Dr. Wynn asked her to say the comment out loud in front of me. Brielle hesitated. Dr. Wynn said if it was just a joke, it should be easy to repeat. Brielle looked at me and couldn't do it. Dr. Wynn said that tells you it wasn't a joke. Something you can say behind your partner's back but not to their face is not humor. It's contempt. Brielle didn't argue. She stared at her hands in her lap and I watched something land on her face that I hadn't seen before. Shame. Not performed shame. Not the shame of getting caught. Real shame. The kind that happens when someone makes you repeat out loud the thing you said in secret, and the words sound different when the person they were about is sitting 3 feet away looking at you. In the second session, Dr. Wynn asked me what I needed from Brielle to continue the marriage. I thought about it for a long time. She let me sit in the silence without filling it. Then I said I needed financial transparency, complete and permanent. I said I needed her to stop treating my income like her personal fund and start treating it like what it was, the combined resource of a partnership. I said I needed to hear her say out loud that what she did was wrong. Not that it was a misunderstanding. Not that I was overreacting. Not that women talk like that. Not that I was being sensitive. Wrong. I needed her to say the word without a qualifier after it. Brielle said it. She said it was wrong to call you that and it was wrong to hide money from you, and I'm sorry. I watched her face when she said it. She meant it. I could tell because she wasn't performing. She wasn't crying or making it dramatic. She said it the way someone says something that costs them. Flat and raw and uncomfortable. Dr. Wynn asked me if I believed her. I said I believe she's sorry she got caught. I don't know yet if she's sorry for what she did. Dr. Wynn said that was honest, and she turned to Brielle and said that's what you're working with. He believes the remorse, but not the motivation. Your job is to prove the motivation is real. Brielle nodded. We restructured everything. I opened a new joint account with full transaction visibility for both of us. Every charge over $100 required a conversation first. Not permission. A conversation. 2 adults discussing how their shared money would be spent before it was spent. The thing I had asked for 3 years ago and been called controlling for wanting. Brielle's personal savings account was closed. In its place, we opened a separate account account for her with a monthly deposit of $500 that we both agreed on. Transparent, documented, hers, completely hers. I wanted her to have her own money. I had always wanted her to have her own money. The difference was that now it was on the table instead of under it. Her credit cards were paid off from the joint account and cut in half. I watched her do it at the kitchen table. She held the scissors for a few seconds before she cut the first one. I could see what it cost her and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to be honest. Those are different things. We set up monthly financial reviews where we sat down together and went through every dollar. Income, bills, savings, discretionary spending, all of it on a shared screen. The first review was tense. The second was exhausting. By the third one, Brielle started asking questions about where our retirement savings were going and how much the mortgage had left on it. She had never asked those questions in 9 years. She didn't know the interest rate on our mortgage. She didn't know how much was in my 401k. She didn't know what I paid in taxes or insurance or what our annual property tax bill was or what it actually cost to maintain the life she was living. She had been spending from a pool of money she never measured. For 9 years, she had swiped the card and watched the balance replenish every 2 weeks and never once looked at the engine behind it. Never once wondered what it cost me to keep that engine running. When she saw the full picture, she got quiet for a long time. She said, "I had no idea you were carrying this much." I said that was the point. She said, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I said, "Because you never asked." Therapy continued for 4 months. Brielle did the work. She showed up every week. She didn't deflect after the first 2 sessions. She started talking about her relationship with money and how her own mother had taught her that a man's job was to provide and a woman's job was to manage, and that managing meant controlling without being seen controlling. She said her mother had done the same thing to her father for 30 years. Hidden accounts, secret purchases, calling him the wallet at Thanksgiving while he sat in the other room watching football, not knowing his wife was defining him by his paycheck to a table full of people. She said her father never found out. He died 5 years ago, still thinking his wife managed the money because she was good at it. He never knew she had a separate account with over $40,000 in it. Brielle said she found out about it when her mother told her after the funeral, like it was a victory, like she had won a game her husband didn't know they were playing. She said she didn't even realize she was repeating the pattern until Dr. Wynn pointed it out. She said the ATM comment came out easily because in her mother's house, that's how women talked about their husbands, like providers, like utilities, like necessary appliances that kept the lights on, not like people, not like partners, not like someone whose feelings mattered. Dr. Wynn said recognizing the pattern was the first step and breaking it was the work of years, not months. Brielle said she was willing to do the work. I believed her, not completely, but enough to stay. Nadia stopped coming around after Brielle told her what happened. I don't know what exactly Brielle said, but Nadia hasn't been to the house in 3 months. Kristen sent Brielle a text saying she was sorry for laughing. Lux never acknowledged it at all. Brielle's mother called me one more time to say I had embarrassed her daughter by making her go to therapy. I told her that her daughter embarrassed herself and that the therapy was keeping her married. She hasn't called since. Brielle got a part-time job last month. Administrative work at a dental office, 20 hours a week. She hasn't worked in 7 years, and the transition was harder than she expected. She came home after her first day and sat on the couch and didn't move for an hour. She said her feet hurt and she had forgotten what it was like to answer to someone other than a toddler. She came home after her first week and said she forgot how tiring it was to be someone other than a mom. I said, "Welcome to every day of my life." She looked at me and I thought she might get defensive. Instead, she laughed. It was the first honest laugh between us in a long time. Not a laugh at my expense. Not a laugh behind a wall. A laugh between two people who were starting to see each other clearly. She handed me her first paycheck, $680 after taxes. She held it out with both hands like it was something fragile. She said she wanted to put it toward the mortgage. I said she could put it wherever she wanted. It was hers. She earned it. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that on a Friday night. I'm sorry you stood on the other side of a wall and heard the worst version of me." I said the worst version of someone is usually the most honest one. She said not anymore. I want to believe that. I don't know if that's true yet. Trust doesn't rebuild in 4 months. Some mornings I wake up and see her making Olin's breakfast and packing his lunch, and I think we're going to be fine. Then I'll pass the kitchen wall on my way to the garage, and I'll remember standing there with a glass of water and hearing laughter that was aimed at me, and I'll feel the distance all over again. But I know she wakes up now and goes to work and comes home tired and still makes dinner and still helps Olin with homework and never once complains that the house isn't as clean as it used to be. She checks the budget app before she buys anything. She asks me about money now, not for permission, for input. She treats it like ours instead of hers. She said we last Tuesday when she talked about replacing the kitchen faucet. She said we should look at options this weekend. I noticed because I always notice now. Olin doesn't know what happened. He knows mom got a job and dad stays home more on Saturdays now. He knows we sit at the table once a month with a laptop and talk about numbers. He thinks it's boring. He asked if he could play outside while we did it, and we both said yes at the same time, and that was the most married we had sounded in months. I hope he never finds out the reason we sit at that table. I still think about that Friday night, the glass of water in my hand, the wall between us, the laughter that came from the other side. I think about how I almost walked away, how I sat in that lawyer's office and felt the weight of a decade pressing down on me and nearly let it crush the marriage instead of fixing it. I stayed because of Olin, but I'm staying now because Brielle is becoming someone different, someone who sees the man on the other side of the wall instead of just the direct deposit he represents. That's all I ever wanted, to be seen as more than what I provide.